I never thought I'd be posting here, but my family situation has become so complicated that I'm at a loss for what to do. I'm Paul, 32 years old, and for the past 2 years, I've been financially supporting my younger sister, Jane, who's 29. To give some context, Jane and I grew up in a middle-class family in a small town. Our parents worked hard to provide for us, but there wasn't much extra money for luxuries. I was always the more studious one, while Jane was more free-spirited. This difference in our personalities became more pronounced as we grew older. After high school, I went to college on a scholarship and studied computer science. I worked part-time jobs to cover my living expenses and graduated with minimal debt. Jane, on the other hand, started college but dropped out after a year, saying it wasn't for her. She moved to the city and started working various jobs, waitressing, retail, and even a brief stint as a yoga instructor. I landed a job at a tech startup right out of college and worked my way up over the years. By the time I was 30, I was in a senior position with a comfortable salary. Meanwhile, Jane continued to struggle. She'd call me occasionally, usually when she was between jobs or having trouble making rent. I'd help out when I could, sending her a few $100s here and there. 2 years ago, Jane called me in tears. She told me she'd been diagnosed with a chronic illness and needed surgery. She didn't have health insurance and was scared about how she'd pay for it. Our parents had recently retired and were living on a fixed income, so they couldn't help much. I felt like I had to step in. I agreed to cover Jane's medical expenses and help her with living costs while she recovered. She moved in with me temporarily, and I paid for her rent when she moved back out. It was a financial strain, but I figured family comes first. I even set up a separate savings account to budget for her expenses. At first, everything seemed fine. Jane would update me on her doctor's appointments and the upcoming surgery. But as time went on, things started to feel off. The surgery kept getting postponed due to various complications that Jane never fully explained. Despite all the money I was spending on her medical care, she never seemed to improve. I started to have doubts, but I pushed them aside. I didn't want to believe that my own sister would lie to me. But last month, I couldn't ignore the red flags anymore. I called the hospital where Jane was supposedly getting treatment, only to find out that they had no record of her as a patient. When I confronted Jane, she broke down and admitted that there was no surgery planned. In fact, she hadn't even been to a doctor. She gave me a long, emotional story about how she was too embarrassed to ask for help outright and didn't want me to think she was a failure. She said she'd planned to use the money to start a business, but ended up spending it on daily expenses and some old debts. I was furious. I felt betrayed and used. I told Jane that I was done paying for everything and that she needed to get her life together. She cried and pleaded, but I stood my ground. I gave her a month to find a job and start supporting herself. A few days later, I received an angry call from our parents. Jane had told them a completely different story. According to her, not only had I refused to help her anymore, but I had also stolen money from her, a supposed inheritance that our grandfather had left for her. I was shocked because I had no idea what she was talking about. As far as I knew, there was no inheritance. Jane had convinced our parents that I had access to some secret bank account that belonged to her, and I had been using the money for myself. She claimed that our grandfather had set aside a substantial sum for her future medical needs, and I had somehow gained control of it. Our parents were livid. They accused me of betraying the family and taking advantage of my sister's vulnerability. No matter how much I tried to explain that I knew nothing about this inheritance, they wouldn't listen. They were completely convinced by Jane's story. I'm at a loss for what to do. My sister has not only lied to me for 2 years but has now turned our parents against me with an even bigger lie. I've always tried to be there for my family, and now I'm being treated like a criminal. I don't know how to prove my innocence when I'm being accused of stealing something that doesn't even exist. This situation has made me question everything. I look back at all the times I've helped Jane over the years and wonder if she was always manipulating me. I'm hurt, angry, and confused. I want to maintain a relationship with my family, but I don't know how to move forward from this. I'm considering cutting off all contact with Jane, but I'm worried about how that will affect my relationship with our parents. They've always been protective of her, seeing her as the one who needs more support. I don't want to lose my entire family over this, but I also can't continue to be taken advantage of. I'm hoping for some advice on how to handle this situation. How do I clear my name when I'm being accused of stealing something that doesn't exist? How do I get my parents to see the truth? And most importantly, how do I move forward with my family after such a massive breach of trust? Update 1. It's been a few weeks since my last post, and the situation has escalated beyond anything I could have imagined. I wanted to provide an update and seek further advice as I'm completely out of my depth. After my original post, I decided to try and clear things up with my parents. I called them and asked if we could meet in person to discuss the situation calmly. They agreed, but when I arrived at their house, I found that Jane was there too. It quickly became clear that this wasn't going to be the rational discussion I had hoped for. My parents insisted that Jane had shown them proof of this mysterious inheritance. According to them, She had emails between her and our grandfather that outlined a trust fund set aside for her medical needs. When I asked to see these emails, Jane suddenly got defensive. She claimed she had deleted them because she didn't want to live in the past. This raised even more red flags for me, but my parents seemed to accept her explanation without question. Feeling frustrated and desperate to clear my name, I decided to do some digging. I managed to get in touch with my grandfather's attorney, Mr. Thompson. He's been handling our family's legal matters for decades, so I figured if anyone would know about a secret inheritance, it would be him. Mr. Thompson was surprised by my call but was very helpful. He confirmed what I already knew: no such trust fund ever existed. He explained that when my grandfather passed away 5 years ago, everything went to my parents, as outlined in his will. There were no individual accounts or trusts set up for any of the grandchildren. I thought this information from Mr. Thompson would be enough to clear my name. I asked him to send an email confirming this, which I then forwarded to my parents. But to my shock, they still didn't believe me. They were convinced that I had somehow manipulated Mr. Thompson or that he was lying to protect me. It was like they were living in an entirely different reality. Meanwhile, Jane has been playing the victim in all of this. She's been telling everyone in our extended family that I ruined her life by taking her only source of financial security. She even told them that I kicked her out of my house, which isn't true. She left voluntarily when I told her I wouldn't pay for her expenses anymore. The fallout from this has been immense. Half of our extended family won't speak to me now. Aunts, uncles, and cousins who have always been close to are now treating me like a pariah. The other half of the family is awkwardly tiptoeing around the subject because they don't want to get involved in the drama. Family gatherings, which used to be enjoyable events, are now tense and uncomfortable affairs. I've tried reaching out to some family members individually to explain my side of the story, but it's been mostly futile. Those who believe Jane's story dismiss anything I say as lies or excuses. Those who are on the fence don't want to take sides and keep telling me to work it out with Jane and my parents. What's most frustrating is that I don't know how to prove that I didn't take anything because there was never anything to take in the first place. It's impossible to provide evidence of something that doesn't exist. To make matters worse, my parents are now talking about cutting me out of the family entirely unless I make things right with Jane. To them, this means giving her more money to make up for the inheritance she never received. They seem to think that since I have a good job, I should be willing to support Jane indefinitely, regardless of the lies she's told. This whole situation is taking a toll on my mental health. I'm having trouble sleeping and concentrating at work. I've started seeing a therapist to help me cope with the stress and anxiety, but it's still overwhelming. I'm at my wit's end. I don't know how to prove my innocence or repair my relationships with my family. Part of me wants to just give in and pay Jane to make this all go away, but I know that would only enable her behavior and potentially lead to more lies and manipulation in the future. I'm considering taking legal action, perhaps a cease and desist letter to Jane to stop her from spreading these lies about me. But I'm worried that escalating things legally might permanently damage my relationship with my parents. Has anyone dealt with a similar situation? How do you prove your innocence when you're accused of stealing something that never existed? How do I get my parents to see the truth about Jane's lies? And is there any way to salvage my relationships with my extended family? Update 2. I want to thank everyone for their support and advice on my previous posts. Your comments gave me the courage to dig deeper and finally uncover the truth about this whole mess. Unfortunately, the reality is even worse than I imagined. Taking the advice of several commenters, I decided to reach out to some of Jane's old friends. I remembered she used to be really close with a girl named Sarah, but they had some kind of falling out last year. I managed to find Sarah on social media and sent her a message explaining the situation. Sarah's response was eye-opening. She told me that Jane had been lying to a lot of people, not just me and our parents. Apparently, Jane had fabricated the entire story about the inheritance as a way to guilt me into continuing to support her financially. She knew our parents would side with her because they've always seen her as the fragile one who needs protecting. But it gets worse. Sarah revealed that Jane had been borrowing money from several other people under the pretense of needing it for medical expenses. She estimated that Jane had borrowed over $10,000 from various friends and acquaintances over the past couple of years, most of whom she had since cut contact with. Armed with this new information, I decided to confront Jane one last time. I invited her to meet me at a coffee shop, thinking a public place might keep things civil. When she arrived, I laid out everything I had learned from Sarah. To my surprise, Jane broke down and admitted everything. She confessed that she'd been in over her head with debt from years of poor financial decisions, and she didn't know how to get out of it. She had maxed out several credit cards, taken out payday loans, and owed money to some questionable individuals. Jane explained that she thought if she could guilt me into paying for everything, she could buy time to figure things out. The lie about the inheritance was her backup plan in case I stopped supporting her. She never expected it to spiral out of control the way it did. I felt a weird mix of anger and pity for her. It was clear she was desperate, but she had gone about everything in the worst possible way. I told her that while I understood her situation, I couldn't forgive her for dragging me through the mud with our family and ruining my reputation. I gave Jane an ultimatum. She could either come clean to our parents and the rest of the family about her lies, or I would do it myself. She begged me not to, saying it would destroy her relationship with our parents. But I stood firm. I told her she had 24 hours to tell the truth, or I would. In the end, Jane couldn't bring herself to confess. So, I took matters into my own hands. I showed my parents the messages from Sarah, as well as the confirmation from the attorney about the non-existent inheritance. I also provided bank statements showing all the money I had given Jane over the past 2 years. My parents were shocked and devastated. They finally admitted that Jane had been lying, but their reaction wasn't what I had hoped for. Instead of apologizing for not believing me, they still expected me to help Jane get back on her feet. They claimed that family sticks together, and since I had the financial means to help her, I should do so. I refused. I told them that while I care about Jane, I can't continue to enable her behavior. I suggested that the best thing for her would be to face the consequences of her actions and learn to stand on her own 2 feet. This led to a huge argument. My parents accused me of being cold-hearted and abandoning my sister in her time of need. They couldn't seem to understand that by constantly bailing Jane out, they were preventing her from growing up and taking responsibility for her life. As for Jane, she's been alternating between apologizing profusely and lashing out in anger. She's accused me of ruining her life by exposing her lies, seemingly oblivious to the fact that she ruined her own life by lying in the first place. I'm at a crossroads now. Part of me wants to wash my hands of this entire situation and cut contact with my family until they come to their senses. Another part of me feels guilty about leaving Jane to face her problems alone, even though I know it's probably what's best for her in the long run. I'm considering offering to pay for therapy for Jane, but only if she agrees to also see a financial advisor and make a plan to pay back her debts. But I'm worried that even this might be seen as enabling her. Has anyone been in a similar situation? How do you help a family member who doesn't seem to want to help themselves? And how do I repair my relationship with my parents when they still seem to think I'm in the wrong for not continuing to support Jane financially? Update 3, it's been a few months since everything blew up, and I wanted to provide a final update on the situation. A lot has changed, and I've made some difficult decisions. After the confrontation with Jane and my parents, I took some time to step back and evaluate my priorities. I realized that I couldn't continue to be embroiled in this constant drama and still maintain my own mental health and professional life. I made the decision to go no contact with Jane. I blocked her number and all her social media accounts. She tried to reach out a few times through mutual friends or by creating new accounts, but I held firm. Each time, I reiterated that I wasn't willing to communicate with her until she took concrete steps to get her life in order. As for my parents, our relationship has become strained. They've continued to side with Jane, despite all the evidence of her lies. They still believe that, at the end of the day, I should be the one to fix things because I'm better off financially. We've had several heated arguments about this, with them accusing me of abandoning the family and me trying to explain the concept of enabling harmful behavior. About a month ago, I made the difficult decision to move to another city for a fresh start. I had been considering a job offer from a tech company in a different state, and this family situation pushed me to accept it. The distance has been both challenging and liberating. I haven't spoken to my parents in over a month now. They've been sending me messages, mostly guilt-tripping me for abandoning the family, but I've learned to tune them out. I've made it clear that I'm open to rebuilding our relationship, but only if they respect my boundaries and stop pressuring me to support Jane financially. As for Jane, I heard through a mutual friend that she's finally started to face the consequences of her actions. Apparently, one of the people she borrowed money from has threatened legal action if she doesn't start repaying her debt. This seems to have been a wake-up call for her. The friend mentioned that Jane has started looking for a steady job and has even considered going back to school to finish her degree. While part of me is glad that Jane might finally be turning things around, I'm maintaining my distance. I've realized that I can't be responsible for her choices or her life. I need to focus on my own well-being and future. This whole experience has taught me a lot about setting boundaries and the importance of self-care. I've started seeing a therapist regularly to work through my feelings of guilt and anger. It's been helpful in processing everything that's happened and in developing healthier coping mechanisms. I've also been focusing on building new relationships in my new city. I've joined a local hiking group and have been volunteering at an animal shelter. These activities have helped me meet new people and start creating a support network that isn't tied to my family drama. In the end, while I feel like I've lost my family in some ways, I've gained peace of mind. I'm not going to keep enabling Jane's behavior, and I refuse to let her or my parents' expectations drag me down anymore. I don't know what the future holds for my relationship with my family, but for now, I'm focusing on myself and moving forward. I want to thank everyone who's offered support and advice over the past few months. Your perspectives and encouragement have been invaluable during some really tough times. If there's one piece of advice I could offer to others in similar situations, it would be this: it's okay to prioritize your own well-being, even if it means making difficult decisions about family relationships. Looking back, I realized that this situation didn't develop overnight. There were signs of Jane's irresponsibility and my parents' enabling behavior for years. I wish I had recognized these patterns earlier and set firmer boundaries. But I'm trying not to dwell on the past and instead focus on creating a healthier future for myself. I'm still open to the possibility of reconciliation with my family, but only if there are significant changes in their behavior and attitudes. For now, I'm taking it one day at a time and focusing on building a life that isn't defined by family drama. Thank you all again for your support throughout this journey. It's been a difficult road, but I feel like I'm finally on a path towards a more positive and stable future.